Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MMOA Podcast. My name is Kay Mayordomo. I'm an outpatient physical therapist and a TA with the Modern Management of the Older Adult Division of Ice Physio. Today, we are going to be talking about how we can reduce barriers to exercise as healthcare providers, because the more barriers we have, the more problems we may have. And that's the title of this podcast. More barriers, more problems. So I've recently noticed on Instagram and just in general, they're posting like you can't squat with a barbell until you can squat with a kettlebell of 35 to 40 pounds, or you can't squat or you shouldn't squat until you can do a full-on mobility drill, or you need to activate your glutes before you deadlift, and just kind of creating more and more barriers and more rules, and instead of just letting people move in a way. Like there have been healthcare providers or just people in general saying like you shouldn't squat past 90 degrees because that's not great for your knees, because that puts a lot of pressure on your knees, or lifting is just for younger people, or you can never kneel on your knee replacement ever again. So lots and lots of barriers to movement, more and more reasons, or more and more ways that people are being told that they should limit movement instead of increasing movement. So that walking might just be enough to get stronger or to get better balance, which walking is great, but it's not everything. So when we as human beings, we need to be able to squat, we need to be able to lift, we need to be able to carry and push and pull. And at some point in time, maybe there was a movement problem in the US specifically. But now we're looking at more of a lack of movement problem. When more and more barriers are created, when more and more rules, more limitations on how we can move, instead of encouraging people to move, even if the movement might not be perfect at first, the fear continues to build. And then patients start to get thoughts in their head of, well, if I can't do this, then maybe I shouldn't do this yet. Oh, but I am not completely, like, I don't have full external rotation, so maybe I shouldn't do this. So even in the patient's head, more and more rules. So that's when we start to see when our relatives and loved ones, patients, they start to get told also to be careful. And that gets more and more limited. So then months and then maybe years down the line, we wonder what happened. Like, why are our patients or our loved ones moving slower? Why can't they get up from a chair? Why can't they pick stuff up from the ground like they used to be able to do, or pick up their grandkids? Why can't they turn their head to check the lanes? Why can't they tolerate turning fast? Or why are they getting excessively sore from just lifting a laundry basket? So it's these things, like when we create these barriers, it doesn't seem like it's such a big deal at first, but if you look down the line of what patients have been told in the past, sometimes they hang on to it, and we need to be part of the solution of reducing barriers, not creating more barriers and more problems. So recently, my mom started to show an interest in working out, and I definitely could have gotten ahead of myself and loaded her up because I knew she was capable, but I fought every urge to do so when we worked out together for the first time. I gave her some doable weights, let her do them to a moderate fatigue, and then we repeated that for a few rounds. She even said that she felt good afterwards, which was awesome. So today we're going to go over 3 things we can do to help us reduce barriers to exercise. So the first thing we're going to do is limit definitive statements, such as you can't do this until you do this, or you may never squat past 90 degrees or have your knees past your toes. Unknowingly, we may say things that our patients carry with them forever. There have been moments where people have told me, surgeon told me that, or sorry, there have been moments where where a patient has told me a surgeon never lifted their hip precautions, so they never ever go past 90 degrees. Rarely are things in rehab and our bodies black and white like that, where a patient can never do something ever again. Some people are told that after a total joint replacement, they can never run on their new joint. We won't get into that right now, but there is a podcast on the PT on Ice Daily Show from Jason London from our endurance division, and he talks about how we can set up these athletes, like people who are returning to run after total knee replacement for success, and what are the risks of returning to running, and what's the prevalence of that. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a podcast on that on the PT on Ice Daily Show. The next thing we can do is being clear about the progression of how the patient can return back to whatever they want to do. We can always reframe this as, hey, once you regain some range of motion or decrease pain, we'll be able to do this, but here's what we can do, or here's how we can do it pain-free or with full range. For example, if we have a patient working on squats for depth, but the end range is painful, we may be starting with a partial range of motion right before the point of pain, and also working on upper extremity assisted squats where it would be pain-free because we're unloading the lower body a little bit. It becomes this and not or situation where we're really leveraging what the patient can do rather than focusing on what they can't. So instead of creating a barrier, you're giving them this bridge of like, hey, you may not be able to do this right now, but here's how we can get there, and here's where we can start. And lastly, keep it simple. What does the patient need to be able to do in everyday life? Like if we think about what I talked about earlier, pressing, pulling, squatting, lifting, carrying. Take what they can do currently, load it up to whatever they feel is tolerable at the time, and work through that full range of motion so that maybe they can eventually do what they need to do. And the more you show a patient what they can do, the more confident they will feel that they don't have to limit every little thing that they do. Like when my mom first started working out with me, she was definitely like, "You want me to pick what up?" And then the following times, she definitely was more willing to pick up a heavier weight and really challenge herself. So, I mean, I think we have a lot to work on in terms of reducing barriers to movement, but if we can be part of the solution, not part of the problem, then we can really move the needle little by little in the right direction by limiting definitive statements, really being clear about the progression of how they can work through maybe a pain-free range of motion now while working into the range of motion that they want to get through, and keeping it simple at first to allow the patient to regain confidence. If we start there, then we can really see our patients and our loved ones do more than they ever thought they could. So in our live courses, we do work on these continuums of different movements that I mentioned, like pressing, pulling, lifting, squatting, carrying. And there's an option for everyone. So if you'd like practice in that and to see what various options are available for your patient at a given time, and to practice these movements for yourself so that you can demonstrate that confidence with your patients as well, then here are some upcoming courses. So February 17th to 18th, so in 2 weeks or so, we'll be in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. February 24th to 25th, we have 2 courses. We have Rochester, Minnesota, and Gales Ferry, Connecticut. And then March 2nd to 3rd, we have a triple header that week. And we have Glencoe, Maryland, Rome, Georgia, and Nova Scotia, Canada. So if you want to see other options besides that, though, please head to the PT on Ice website and check out some courses near you. We hope to see you at a course soon. And thank you for listening today on my MMOA podcast, More Barriers, More Problems. Thank you. Have a fantastic week. Bye.